This week we finished the turbo kit on my engine swapped 1979 Toyota Corolla. This thing has got a built 2RZ engine, it's got a full standalone engine management system, and last week we started to turbocharge it. We built the entire exhaust manifold from scratch, we got the turbo mounted, and we got a few things started, but this week we finished everything out. We got the intercooler and all of the intercooler pipe mounted, we've got the turbo plumbing done, we got everything ready to go, and we're taking it for its first boosted test drive. I'm super stoked about this one, so let's get right on into it. Last week, we got this entire manifold built. We got the drain bung onto the timing cover. We pulled and reinstalled the engine to fix a few things, but unfortunately, some of the parts that we had ordered didn't come in time, and so we were left hanging. This week, we're gonna wrap everything up and get this turbo kit finished so we can actually hear it fire up with the turbo. So first things first is we got to get a wastegate on this manifold. Currently there is no wastegate, there's not even a place for a wastegate, but our wastegate came in, and so now we need to figure out how we're going to get it attached to the manifold. I think that the plan from the get-go has been to put it on the front of the manifold right about here and have it point straight down to expel excess exhaust straight towards the ground. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do this, but we need to have it pretty darn high up on this collector so we can actually get more than one of these tubes involved in dumping the exhaust gases. And we're also going to need to have it somewhat out of the way because this is a fairly large framed wastegate and this is a fairly large framed turbo, and we're trying to get everything fit in there without too much interference. So I've got a piece of stainless that I'm going to cut and try and contour towards this collector. That way we can get this attached and on there so we can start making boost, but not making too much boost. So I'm gonna go ahead, we're gonna pull the turbo off, start getting this thing locked up, maybe tack it in place, and see where we can go from there. We got the piece of stainless welded onto our collector, but I think this is about as high as we can comfortably go with this, because I would like to rotate this turbo down just a hair. I want to get it as straight of a shot to here as possible, and it's going to have some 90s. So even if we rotate the turbo a little bit, we can rotate it to about there before we're touching the wastegate, which is far too close for my comfort. I really don't want the turbo housing touching the wastegate. So I'm going to now go ahead, I'm going to pull off the manifold. Not sure we're going to have quite enough priority for this wastegate, seeing as it is straight sideways and really only on those two runners. But I think that it might do okay. Worst case scenario is we have some boost creep and we need to reassess what we're doing for the wastegate. We might need to add a second wastegate, a bigger wastegate. I don't know. For now, I'm just going to kind of send it with this wastegate placement and see how it does. That's all I can really do. I'm going to pull this manifold off, bore a hole in it with a hole saw, and get this wastegate welded on. I got the wastegate completely welded out. It's super solid now, and everything clears just barely, which is how everything in this car has been. So since we got that clearing, we've got the ability to put a screamer pipe on it straight down. I'm gonna go ahead and start getting my O2 sensor locations figured out. So downpipe's going down, it gets fairly close to the firewall pretty quick. And I did want to put 2 locations for O2 sensors, mainly for tuning purposes. So I'm going to put the standard O2 sensor that is going to read all the time on my wideband a little further away, just to keep it away from the majority of the heat of the manifold and everything. Try and keep it alive without roasting it. And then we're going to have one up a little higher that is going to be for tuning. That way, when it's time to tune it, it's real simple. Just throw it in right there and we should be good to go. So I got this bolted in. We've got some marks on here. I'm going to go ahead, pull it out, and weld in 2 different O2 sensor bungs, one up high, one down low, and that'll give me my two O2 sensor locations. That way, when we do fire this thing up, even if we don't have the rest of the exhaust on here, we can at least have the O2 sensor reading with the ECU, and it can start doing some fuel corrections. So if it's running super lean or anything like that, it can try and fix that before we have any issues with like melting pistons. So one step at a time, we're getting this thing figured out, and it's of course getting laid out again because the days go by super quick. But I'm gonna go ahead, pull that out, drill some holes, weld some O2 sensors in, and then put that back in. I have a cap for one of the O2 sensors, a plug, so that I can just run the one and there's not gonna be a gaping hole in the exhaust. And then we're gonna be ready to start on intercooler tubing. So I'm gonna have to drill a hole here and drill a hole here and start figuring out how we're gonna get intercooler piping from the turbo to the intake through this front mount intercooler. Got our downpipe with our two O2 sensor bungs welded in. We've got plenty of room on both of them, so we can take this one out for when we're getting tuned. This one's gonna go to our wideband nano, the Fuel Tech wideband, and we're gonna get everything completely wrapped up. This thing is finally coming together. We're about to connect the turbo to the throttle body. We've got our silicone couplers in, so we can actually start working on getting the intercooler routed. So we're gonna need to start by getting intercooler hoses through the core support. So I'm gonna have to plow a hole through on this side and on this side, and then from there it should be pretty straightforward. From the throttle body, we're gonna have a 90-degree coupler. It's gonna come forward. We're gonna send it down, over, and attach to this side. On this side, we're literally just gonna put a 90 coupler, and we're gonna connect the two as simple and easy as possible. So this should be fairly simple. The most tedious and scary part is going to be cutting holes through this core support that's paint mashed and doesn't have any holes in it. So not really looking forward to that, but got to do what you got to do, and I don't really think we have many other options. So I'm going to get to it. We're going to get the intercooler routed on this thing. This is pretty much exactly what I was envisioning, just straight out of the turbo, as quick into the intercooler as we can, over, up, and into the throttle body. So this is just about as short as I can make the intercooler piping. One day I would like to either fabricate a forward-facing intake for this intake, or, you know, maybe use my $1,600 forward-facing intake manifold that I purchased years ago. I didn't pay $1,600 for it, it was used, but regardless, do have a really nice forward-facing intake manifold that I should be putting on this thing, but unfortunately, it also comes in contact with the brake master cylinder. So before I put a very expensive intake manifold on here that's going to get destroyed on that intake or on that brake booster, I would like to move the booster, move the, I don't know exactly, I forget what it hits, I forget if it's the booster or the master, but it does contact the brake system, and I don't want to do that quite yet. Right now, the only issue I have with the way this intercooler hosing is routed is right here. This is not quite long enough to reach this piece, so in between there's this little like 2.5-inch section of tube that really needs to be there in order to make this connection happen. It's just barely, I could probably make it work with a coupler, but I'm not trying to have that much coupler with no support under it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm actually gonna pull this lower hose out. I'm gonna pull this lower tube out. I'm gonna clean everything up, and I'm gonna try and weld these together. I say try because this is fairly thin aluminum and I'm not the best aluminum welder, but I can stick things together. So I'm going to try real hard to put them together, make some decent welds. Hopefully we can get it to stick. Then we will have nothing but single couplers in between all of the hoses. So we'll have this single 90 go into this single coupler that will then go to this welded piece, which will be attached to here. Then that'll be a single coupler into the intercooler, single coupler into this little jaunt, and a single coupler into the turbo. That'll be pretty much everything. So that'll get us boost going into the throttle body from the turbo. So this thing will actually be able to make some boost when we get it together. Next thing I got to do is I got to get coolant to this turbo. It is unfortunately going to need coolant. I'm Knew that when I started building this, but I, for some reason, figured it was going to be easier. Didn't think about the fact that the coolant routing comes from way over there. So we're going to have to get coolant hoses from the back driver's side of the engine all the way around into the turbo so we can get coolant to and from it. I'm just going to use the same coolant lines that went into the throttle body that is no longer going to have coolant going through it. All right, got these welded out, and there's some decent welds there. There's some not so decent welds, but there's some decent welds there. So pretty stoked about that. It's still pretty darn hot. So since I don't want to melt things, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work on getting the turbo drain line made. So the way this turbo is clocked right now, unfortunately, the turbo drain has to be at just a little bit of an angle in order to clear the manifold flange. So the flange is pretty much directly down. So the dash 10 adapter is just a little bit to the side, so there everything is going to be at a little bit of a tilt. It's a little bit too much of a tilt right now. I got to loosen up the compressor housing so I can turn the compressor housing on the center section. The center section is going to sit a little bit closer to level, but not a ton, because we got to be able to clear the manifold and everything. And I'm going to get a line made that goes from here down to there. We've got some braided steel AN. It's just like a drain kit. So I got the braided steel because it's a little tougher than just the black nylon covered. I'm going to go ahead and get some ends on that, get it cut to length, and get a drain on the turbo. So I got the drain line on the turbo. I don't really love it. I am probably going to order a couple 45-degree fittings. I thought straights would be the best way to go, but it's not looking super great. With the straight fitting, it's actually touching the manifold itself, and the angles are just a little tight. So with some 45s, I think it would do a lot better, but the only 45 I've got is a super ugly colorful one, and I don't do colorful AN fittings. I just don't. I've done it before. They're ugly. I'd much rather wait and buy some black ones that look decent. I also got to get the 1 3/4 tubing off of the wastegate mocked up so we can get it out and pointed in a good direction and not just straight at the frame rail and subframe. Other than that, we got the intercooler pipe finished up. We got it over here. We got the coolant hoses routed to the turbo. So all I got to do now is route these and put some heat shielding on them. I've got the fiberglass reflective heat shielding. I got to finish getting the O2 sensor mocked up. I've got the O2 sensor in the exhaust, but I do need to go ahead and get the wideband actually mounted in the dash and have all the wires routed, so it's good to go. It also has CAN bus, so it communicates with the ECU and can do on-the-fly fuel corrections, which is huge. That's awesome for me. It makes me a lot more comfortable with trying to like somewhat drive and tune this thing on my own before I actually get it dyno tuned. I'm definitely not going to be pushing a ton of boost at all through this thing. In fact, when I do that, I'm going to be very, very low boost and try and stay out of the boost. I just want to take it for a drive, make sure everything shakes down decent. We don't have any major leaks or anything like that, so that when we do put it on the dyno, there's not a bunch of issues we're trying to resolve outside of just tuning the ECU. But for now, I've got things ripped apart because I had to route the coolant lines to under the intake over here, so I just pulled the intake off to get it done. Got to get the intake back on, got to take the exhaust all the way back apart so we can get a manifold gasket on, a T3 gasket on, and an exhaust flange gasket on. Then finalize all of the intercooler routing with just putting some T-clamps on there so that it's all secured. And we're waiting on the feed for the turbo. That's going to be like pretty much the last thing we're waiting on. It should be in tomorrow, and I already have everything to get it from the sandwich plate all the way up to the turbo. I just got to get it into the turbo, which is pretty important. Got to get oil to the turbo. Then we should be able to fire this thing up pretty darn soon. Whew, nerve-wracking. I'm a little anxious about that. Also, I forgot to say, I got to modify my battery tray so that I can get it around the intercooler piping, so I might even need to do a smaller battery, like I call them Honda batteries because the Honda batteries are all real small. The battery that's been in this thing is massive. So
I'm gonna get back to putting this thing together, rerouting the wiring harness, getting intake gaskets, exhaust gaskets and such on, and hopefully by the time we get the fitting for the turbo feed, we're just about wrapped up and we can actually start this thing tomorrow, maybe take it for a cruise.
I think we're finally ready to start this thing up. We've got the turbo bolted to the manifold with a gasket. We've got the manifold bolted to the engine with a gasket. We've got the downpipe on. We've got the O2 sensor on. We've got coolant feed lines, oil feed line, oil drain line, wastegates on, intercoolers all set up. Tightened everything down, put all the electronics back on. We've got a battery in here that is currently sitting on the intercooler piping, so we need to get a smaller battery to get that sorted. Got coolant in it. We've got oil in it. The only coolant that's sitting on the ground is from it spilling everywhere. I don't think there's an oil leak yet. I haven't cranked it over. I went ahead and fairly rudimentarily set up the O2 sensor. So we've got the O2 sensor over here. It's all wired into the aux beam setup, so I will have to turn it on every time, but I need to route the wires. For now, it's okay. I really want to hear this thing fire up. It's linked into the ECU. The ECU has a setting where if it's at 100% throttle position, it won't fire the injectors. So it'll crank, but it won't fire the injectors so that we can build oil pressure. And since the oil feed to the turbo is coming from the same place that the fuel or the oil pressure sensor is, we should be able to wait until it builds oil pressure, and then we'll know that the turbo is getting oil. So I guess all that's really left is to get in and crank it. Whew. I'm nervous, so let's do this. Let's, before we do anything crazy, make sure there's no fuel leaks. Fuel leaks can be extremely dangerous. So, fuel rail feels dry. We'll keep an eye on the fuel pressure. And I've got a fire extinguisher handy, so about covers all the bases. Now let's see. Hi, look at that. There is no fuel in our exhaust. Let's see. We're waiting for oil pressure. That's right, 50 psi of oil pressure. That's a good start. Fuel pressure still at a little over 40. Check one final time for fuel leaks. Fuel leaks are definitely the main thing that could cause a big issue. We're gonna fire this thing up. Maybe. Come on! Poor starter, just do it! It's so close! Oh. I might have gotten the starter signal wire, the starter main wire, a tad warm. Take two. It's so close. Dumbass! There's an engine coolant temp sensor that needs plugged in that's probably not telling it what it needs to know. There we go. Now we got engine coolant temp. Let's see if it fires easier. It's like it's not firing as well. Ah! All right, I'm doing a thing that I don't really want to do, but I'm gonna do it. I want to hear this thing flip and start. Let's see if brake clean does anything. It's got to go through the entire intercooler, so it's probably not going to do near as much as it would prior, but we'll see. Is it going? Rage. I drove this thing in here. All I did was change everything. We're gonna go to engine settings, RPM signal, and change it to 103 degrees. Nope. All right, I wanna cry. Change it to 95. Smaller changes. Okay. This thing really doesn't want to start for me right now. That really makes me sad. I think when I first got this thing to start, we were at like 120 degrees of timing. We're gonna try this. I'm gonna get my phone out. I'm gonna watch the YouTube video where I made this thing run halfway decent, and I'm gonna set it to whatever timing that is. I watched my own video on this, and now I got signals. Are we out of gas? I've got 16 PSI of fuel pressure. I swear if I'm out of gas and that's why it won't start. Yeah, it'll only build like 16 PSI of fuel pressure. We were in fact out of gas. And then the gas station that's conveniently located about 1.5 miles from my house, well, they put padlocks on every single one of their pumps at about 7 p.m. when they close every night, and it's 8:30 p.m. So not only do they not accept cash, they lock the handle of the pump to the pump itself, so you can't get gas with a card. So I siphoned gas. Actually, I got gas out of my Hilux because it's carbureted by running it and then sticking the fuel line into this tank. Got about half a gallon of gas, which is not a ton. Spilled about 1/8 of that all over the side of the Corolla. And now, maybe, just maybe, we'll actually build fuel pressure and be able to start this thing. Well, it built fuel pressure. Surprise, surprise, having gas that can actually build fuel pressure. Let's see if we can actually get it started. Let's go through, change my RPM signal back to 93. And see how it does. It's so close. All right, at this point, the battery is dying. 1.5 hours of messing with this thing later, we have fuel pressure, and now it doesn't even want to try and start. Feeling pretty freaking defeated by this stupid car right now. I will be reassessing in the morning. And maybe, just maybe, I won't want to burn it down in the morning. But right now I kind of want to burn it to the ground. I don't know what I did, but I got it to start. And just as easy as getting it to start, I killed it. I'm gonna try 90 again.
What did you touch?
I don't know. Oh my God! It's running! And the turbo goes spinny spin! Holy crap, things are doing things! Oh my God, I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know what changed. Nothing wanted to work. Nothing. Like nothing wanted to work. But it's making turbo whistly noises even. Go back to like 93. That's where I was at when I started this whole journey. I don't know. Things were mad at me. Oh my God, there's the manifold's warm. Things are warm. The turbo went swissily. Oh my God. It's been like literally 2.5 hours. Finally! We are running as rich as you could possibly rich. 9.5 to 1. But God, it runs! I'm done. It starts, it makes whistling noises. I can go to bed not depressed. I was getting so sad. So, I'm gonna go to bed, let the shot air out.
You can see the smoke.
You can't see you very well. You can, kind of. Oh. Shout out to Chloe. She puts up with all my bullshit. It is 10:30. She works tomorrow at 7 a.m. And she's been in the garage with me for about 3 hours trying to figure out why on earth this thing wouldn't run. And it runs. The unburned fuel. Oh, not to mention it's 10:30 at night and I was rev bombing a straight piped turbo 2RZ. I'm sure that my neighbors love me. I don't care at this point. It runs! This morning, we're gonna go ahead and wrap some things up. So, we had taken this off because I was actually trying to use brake clean to get this thing to actually fire up. But before we even mess with the engine, I've got a full gas can of premium, because now this thing is boosted. So we're gonna go ahead, put a few gallons of premium in the tank so we actually have some fuel, put the engine bay back together, get that sorted out, get the smaller battery I've got into the engine bay so that we can actually, you know, have a battery that's not sitting on the intercooler piping. And then hopefully start it up, make sure there's no leaks, make sure we have no issues, and take it for a test drive. Definitely can't take it for a spirited test drive because it's just not ready for an actual amount of boost yet. We got to get it tuned. We got to get some bigger injectors in here. We got to do some things, but I'm really excited to take this thing for a drive, hear the turbo whistle, and maybe feel just a little bit of boost. I went ahead and wrapped everything up. I got some heat shielding on these coolant lines that go right over the turbo hot side. I've got the battery in, I've got the intercooler hooked up to the throttle body, battery tie down in, and it's even got the tray that I modified. Checked oil, oil is good. Let's see. I might add a little bit of coolant to this thing because it seems to be just a tad low, but I think we're ready to see if this thing fires up any better today. Yesterday was an absolute ordeal trying to get this thing fired up, but I've got a feeling today might be better. I don't know if it was a low battery or what it was, but the battery that's in there was on the charger all night, so it's got a full charge. Everything should be good to go. I'm gonna fire this thing up and maybe even make just a little bit of boost. Now it's got some premium fuel in it, which is essential. It's got everything to actually push air into the intake, and hopefully it fires up. If it fires up, I'm going to go through and I'm going to start changing a few things in the ECU to accommodate for boost so that it knows what's going on. But for now, we're going to fire this thing up, see if it runs any better, and take it for a test cruise and see how the oil pressure does in the pan. See if maybe we can take tight turns without it, I don't know, oil starving. So, moment of truth, let's see how this goes. Oh. Wow, that was so much better. Holy cow. Well, it does burnouts. I think we have everything ready to drop the hood, pull this thing out, and see what it does. So let's drop the hood and see if this clears like I think it might. And worst case scenario, I will cut this brace out. Not too scared. I'd rather cut the brace out than cut a hole in the hood, that's for sure. Well, we're probably going to clearance this hood, cut this off, see how things go from there. There's that. And now we're gonna cut some things. Let's see if the hood closes now. Yep. Look at that, that's all we needed. So the grill does need a little bit of trimming to fit around the intercooler, and I'm not going to do that quite yet. So we're going to take this thing for a cruise, just a little bit naked. It is time to take the turbocharged Toyota Corolla for its first test drive. Let's go. All right. This is insane. Adjust some fuel trims. Whew. I saw 3 PSI on this, which is give or take 6 PSI of positive pressure versus atmosphere. That's nothing for this. Nothing. All right, I'm gonna whip out the laptop and see if I can get a couple things adjusted. Let's see if we fixed any of our running real lean issues. I had forgotten I set up two-step on this thing, and boy is it rowdy. I'm stoked. For the first drive, went awesome. Had a few tune issues. It definitely needs ironed out on the tune. Having the O2 sensor and closed loop correction helped a ton. It helped the ECU kind of accommodate for what's going on. I also went through and adjusted the fuel tables. This thing pushed about 8 PSI of boost. The fuel tech said 5.2 to 5.4, but it reads negative 3.3 just sitting there because we're at 7,000 feet in elevation. So we're about 3.3 PSI less than we would be at sea level. But all in all, engine bay is nice and simple. You don't see a bunch of wires in your face. It's coming together. And this thing is 100% built by me. I've wired this thing headlights to taillights. Every single wire on it I did. I built the engine from the ground up. I built the turbo kit from the ground up. I swapped this transmission into it. I built the motor mounts, the trans mounts. I've gone through the entire rear end. Super satisfying to drive this thing down the street and have it absolutely rip. I'm excited to get this thing on the dyno, to get it tuned, and sooner than later, I would really like to get it to a track. Love to know what this thing does in the quarter mile, but unfortunately it's November, and here in New Mexico, there isn't a track open for like 5 or 6 months. They don't really open till March or so, mid-March. So I might have to trailer it to Arizona, Texas, Southern California, something like that, to actually be able to get to a track, but it rips. I'm stoked. So thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and I really hope to catch you on the next one.